Sorry about the delay there, just a bit of technical difficulties on the backside. Everyone should be giving massive props and thanks to Alyssa for dealing with them on the backside. Thank you very much. We do appreciate it. For now, we are just waiting to get into the client draft and into the actual game itself. So with all of these picks locked in, how are we thinking about this draft? What do we think? Do we see any clear winners or any clear losers in the draft thus far, or do we think it's fairly even across the board?
Well, right now I see on both sides a lot of scaling. On Imagine Shadows, I see a Kaisa and a Cassiopeia, and like you said, Hecarim has been plaguing ever since his rework. I imagine early on he's kind of their comfort or their kind of blanket to the late game, but then it's kind of the same for DZG. They have the Swain, they have the Trundle, they have the Yone, they have LeBlanc that can just nuke Kaisa if she steps way too far forward. So overall, I think it's more kind of 50-50 in terms of which team has better late game scaling and who can get there first.
Yeah, the thing that I'm noticing, especially here, is DZG has a lot of really good team fight AoE with that Misfortune, with that Swain, and with that Yone. But at the same time, they also have really good single target pick with the LeBlanc, with the Swain again, and with the Trundle. So it's not incredibly easy for Kaisa and for Cassio to position in these fights, let alone to get into them in the first place. If DZG can grab someone out of the fight like Cassio and like Kaisa before the fight starts, suddenly the scaling advantage doesn't particularly matter because you're playing out a 4v5.
I guess you also say the same for Imagine Shadow sides. One good Blitzcrank hook and their DZG's entire team fight is just in shambles. If he pulls the Misfortune or if he pulls the LeBlanc, that's just a free knockup, free miasma, and she's just dead. And now it's basically just a one fight for Imagine Shadows.
Yeah, so we should be seeing a lot of scrappy mid-game pick fights, trying to play around these neutral objectives, the early heralds, the dragons, just seeing if this Blitzcrank can get enough value in this game. It is a surprisingly out there blind pick. I really wasn't expecting to see the Blitzcrank just out in the open.
I do think it is kind of odd. I think maybe they could have gone for something a little bit more safer, but I also kind of see why they want the Blitzcrank. The DZG does a Misfortune Trundle. I'm guessing in their thought process, they want something that can just pull those two champions out of the fight immediately. Especially if they're like a Trundle. Yes, Trundle has his ultimate to stay alive, but if he just gets pulled out of the fight like over a wall, he's just dead. Same for Misfortune, she's such an immobile AD carry aside from the strut. It's just basically a free kill.
Yeah, something we didn't actually take into consideration as we're looking into the client draft now. Hecarim did have the possibility of going into the top lane, and right now, given what they're hovering, that's where it looks like it's headed. I remember the last time I saw a Hecarim top lane, I think it was Season 8, maybe Licorice playing it on Cloud 9. It's been a very long time since that pick has been flavorful, or let alone potentially playable. So it'll be interesting to see how Sid Voltor can play this in the laning phase, especially into the much more aggressive and much more lane-dominant pick that is Yone.
That's true, but also then you have to think about how the Sejuani will pair into the Trundle. Later on, the Trundle's just going to absolutely bully the Sejuani. So it's kind of a flip of the coin as to what they want to do. Do they want to keep Sejuani in the jungle and have Trundle get more priority? Or do they believe that the Hecarim is better into the Yone to get more top prio and use that to help get Herald, get more pressure in the jungle, or maybe do some roams mid to kill DZG a lot?
LeBlanc is a fairly difficult champion to roam on, but with Cassio, with that miasma, you do have the potential to shut down the LeBlanc early. And if you can stop GVG from roaming, which seems to be his comfortable style of champions, those things like the Akshan, like the LeBlanc, things that can get out of mid lane, step onto the map, and make their presence known, suddenly you can shut down a lot of the playstyle that DZG has, which potentially could be a win condition for Imagine Shadow.
I do agree.
For now, as we're waiting for the client draft to lock in, I did want to ask you, ICG, as someone who's played in this sort of area before, in this not semi-pro, but you would say like competitive style of scene. Do you think the presence of these highly contested meta picks like Hecarim, like Misfortune, has a large impact on how the players will draft and how they'll play it out? Or do you think it's more about comfort?
I think it's more about comfort and also maybe personal preference. For me personally, when it comes to like meta picks, I don't think they're necessary, and it doesn't really affect me in terms of like mentally of like how I want to pick a champion. So I'd say it's probably close towards comfort. If their comfort is picking Hecarim, then let them pick Hecarim. But that's not going to change how we want to draft unless it's a necessity to change.
Okay, okay. I get where you're coming from there. I think comfort does have a lot of influence, especially at this level of play, how you pick your champions. Because if you pick just like whatever the rank 1 on OPGG is, if you don't know how to play, you're not going to be able to pilot it to that level of comfort. So we'll have to see if Imagine Shadow and if DZG can pilot these meta champions to their fullest. And before we head to a short break, I did also want to ask you, have you tried Dubby before?
Yes, I have indeed.
I also recently tried Dubby, and I have to say, thankfully, DZG is sponsored by them. Dubby is an energy drink similar to some things that you may already use. Dubby contains lots of essential nutrients, vitamins, amino acids, and some extra caffeine derived from the seeds of coffee plants. There's no sugar, no maltodextrin filler, no artificial colors or dyes, and it's totally gluten-free. And if you use the code DZGWIN, you can get 10% off your entire purchase, including a starter pack that has a shaker and 3 sample flavors. You can check out the link in the chat right now to go and support what we do around here, support the casters, support the people behind production, support the players. We'll be right back before we hop into game 1, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Sometimes I can't help but feel like I don't belong here. Out of place, out of mind, like all the time. There's nothing else that feels like it's meant for me. But I've got a sweet escape. Under bright light, illuminate my face. Under bright light, it's shining down on us. Under bright light, illuminate your face. Under bright light, that's when I come alive. Baby, take me higher. I wanna see the whole sky. See the galaxy's reflection in your eyes. There's nothing that compares to this energy. I've got a sweet escape. Under bright light, illuminate my face. Under bright light, it's shining down on us. Under bright light, illuminate your face. Under bright light, that's when I come alive.
And we are back, jumping ourselves into game 1 of DZG Arcadia versus Imagine Shadows. We did have a bit of a mix-up in the draft phase. We were expecting that Hecarim to go into the jungle, but it is stepping into the top lane with Ghost of all summoner spells, which I think is an interesting choice. We'll have to see if it works out.
I think, for me, I believe Ghost is more of a less of a staple for Hecarim, because obviously he loves movement speed, and I think that also allows him to do more roam potentials, which could...
To know who has a crush on whom.
I am thinking the last time that we did see Hecarim in the top lane, it was very focused on that teleport ignite, that lane domination playstyle, trying to just bully your way into the laning phase, just trying to have that lane domination style again. We'll have to see if that can work into that aggressive pick of Yone and see if we can make that happen. The Ghost will have much more useful scaling in the late game as opposed to the teleport ignite that we're used to seeing.
Which one of you is bearded?
I believe that also the same goes for the Cassiopeia as well. She also opted into the Ghost instead of the teleport, which I think is a little odd. I think teleport on mid lane is a little bit more beneficial, especially in these type of matchups where both of these champions want either a tier or a lost chapter involved. But then when you look at the other side, Misfortune is also forced to go onto the cleanse against the Blitzcrank. So it'll be interesting to see if they can maybe try to blow that cleanse early on and maybe have a Sejuani going for a gank.
Yeah, very, very early use of the cleanse will put definite Lesbian in trouble in that laning phase, but if they can play their bully style, they do have the Swain down there and support, which should opt for plenty of damage, as we're already seeing on the Kaisa, especially with the Electrocute. There's the potential for this Misfortune lane to just scale out of control.
Yes, I believe Misfortune is one of the... is a very lane dominant 80 carry, especially right now with her love tap and as well as press attack, especially against Kaisa. It's actually very hard for her to trade. And actually, Hecarim looking to do a lot of damage.
Plenty of damage in this trade. Sid Voltor is out of mana, but it doesn't matter! Gets that last Q off to get the solo kill first of blood. No Summoner's Burn, just a straight up 1v1.
That is just the power of the new Hecarim. Those buffs are actually insane. I believe that's the new... His Q can now stack 3 times, and the damage scale is actually quite insane.
Oh, GVG, nice W away from the flash on Hyper Expert, so no kill happening in the mid lane. And that's a flash away from Sejuani as well, which is fairly important for her ganking potential.
For sure, that does give GVG a little bit more leeway. It's actually a really nice double E.
Using Phonic, dropping the Ignite onto Eevee. Eevee's going to be forced to flash and to heal away. Definitely Lesbian was forced to use Flash and Cleanse in an earlier trade, but getting the Summoner spells out of that Kaisa feels really, really powerful.
Yes, as I said before, I've played a lot of Kaisa. Having no sums at not even 4 minutes into the game is going to be a very difficult time laning. Although they're not really pushing for more of a lead. I feel like maybe MF and Swing could go for a little bit more poke, but I guess they're opting for... I believe they're getting the Skull Crab right now, so to kind of give more power towards the Trundle.
Yeah, they're just going to grab that first bottom side Scuttle, make sure Trundle doesn't have to pick it up, maintain that vision for themselves on the bottom side of the map, which means also that Grave News can try and make something happen on this top side. He knows Sid Voltor has no flash as he opted for the Ghost. Hyper Expert is up here as well. Argo has that third Q stacked up, is looking for the knock-up on Sid Voltor. He is going to be able to find it. Grave News is here as well with the Pillar. Ghost is burned from Sid Voltor. A nice knock-up coming through from Hyper Expert. Sid Voltor is still ghosting away. Grave News taking plenty of damage from this minion wave and from the Sejuani. Sid Voltor maybe looking for the re-engage, but Grave News isn't going to be able to walk away. Argo tries to get the Q knock-up back in, but doesn't manage to find Hyper Expert. So it is just trades of health bars, no kill going over for either side.
A lot of action going on in this game, and I am loving it. Both teams are really wanting to try to get out of this early game and accelerate their way in towards the mid to late game.
Yeah, we are already seeing on that top side the difference between the Conqueror and the Lethal Tempo in this particular matchup. Sid Voltor are already sitting on that tier, which means Hecarim's mana problems are essentially no more. It's going to be really difficult for Argo to try and make trades happen in this lane with the sustain that this new Hecarim has.
That is true, and now the Cassiopeia also having her own tier, so now her sustain will be even better, and that's honestly the start of her rise to being a very menace to this team.
Yeah, I'm very worried about how this DZG comp interacts with the Miasma, just between the Yone and the LeBlanc, just for the potential of engages that they want to try and make happen, or potential for picks. Miasma can really shut both of those champions down really hard. And immediately we've got a pause coming out. We are having just a small amount of connection issues with the DZG AD carry. Hopefully we'll get getting back into game sooner rather than later, but we can take this time to just look over the state of the game real quick and see how the game is going for both sides. There's no real gold lead happening right now, despite the first blood up there in the top side. So right now we've just got all quiet.
And I think it's safe to say for they want to tone down a little bit. Infernal Dragon is up right now. I believe with Trundle, I believe it's a lot easier as well as for DZG to get this dragon. They're going to have a lot more prio in this bot lane with how much poke they have.
Yep, we will have that quick spectator delay. It'll get the pause out of the way. Riot Spectator Client, as we know, works perfectly well all the time, always, and has never had a single issue in its entirety of its existence. We are now finally actually back into the game, and everything should be going smooth sailing from here.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I say that, and now I've jinxed it, and we are in for a mess of trouble for tonight, which, you know, I'm sure Alyssa will have so much fun dealing with. We are seeing both of the teams consolidate a lot of their potential in the bottom lane right now. Symphonic is forced to flash over the wall. Meantime, 911 Detective tries to get some extra pressure on the Definite Lesbian, but no hook came through. But that is the flash off of the DZG support, and that's, for Swain, an immobile carry style of champion, potentially disastrous. Oh, the hook is going to land on to Definite Lesbian. The cleanse is away, but the Unite is coming through. Detective John taking so much damage, but Kai'Sa is going to do a little bit more in this early game, but Definite Lesbian doesn't manage to find the last hit. Symphonic grabs that one, but now the full health, full mana Swain is going to look to get some work done on this Kai'Sa, but the minions are putting in plenty of work as well. Eevee is going to be forced to run away as he spots the Trundle on the pink ward. Just a 1-for-1 on the bottom side, but the support grabbing the last hit as opposed to the AD carry grabbing the last hit for Imagine Shadows means a fairly winning trade in their favor.
It is very unfortunate. I believe, if I saw that correct, Misfortune auto the minion, not once, but I think twice, missing the kill on the Kai'Sa does help her a little bit. But I don't believe it's that bad. She still has a Moon Quiver, and Misfortune's still going to be quite a menace in the lane. Kai'Sa does take a lot longer to start becoming more of a actual AD carry rather than Misfortune.
Yeah, Kai'Sa really does need that first evolve, getting that extra bolts out of the Acapian rain to make sure she has that isolated DPS, which Kai'Sa is so well known for. It's going to take her a bit of extra time. She's still plenty of AD away, so DZG still has time to try and play the bully in this laning phase. And speaking of playing the bully, look at Sid Volter here, just pressuring Argo off of his wave from Grave News, trying to make a play happen onto mid lane. Symphonics going to find a little bit of Vision of Empire to try and get some extra pressure onto Hyper Expert, but with the Aftershock on, Sejuani should just be able to walk away. Not being able to walk away. Definitely Lesbian is going to be forced to flash, with the Glacial Augment slow is going to guarantee the hook for Detective John. But now with Misfortune under tower and Symphonic rotating back down, maybe they can make something happen, but they're going to opt to just walk away from the play instead.
I believe actually it looks like they are trying to make a play. Trundle is walking down actually towards the bot lane. Might look for a pillow on the Kai'Sa.
Something. The Vision of Empire again, forcing Kai'Sa to walk backwards. The flash comes through, but nice placement on the root from Swain. That never moved, putting in so much work. But Grave News is going to be able to find extra tower damage and get picked off. The heal coming through to keep Kai'Sa alive. Very nicely played from the bottom lane of Imagine Shadows.
That was such a very, very good play. And it's going to honestly get this Kai'Sa a lot further ahead than what she should be, honestly.
Yeah, I really liked the setup from Grave News and from Symphonic there, the Vision of Empire plus that pillar, making it so difficult for Kai'Sa to get out of that situation. But Detective John, with great placement, or great positioning of his own, able to make sure that Grave News was tanking tower there as the play was happening. Guarantees the kill back and even saves his own AD carry.
That's true, but now it looks like DZG are going back down towards the bot lane to try to start this Infernal Dragon. While also...
Yeah, no Hyper Experts on the top side, looking for the dive. The Fate Seal from Argo is going to find one. Hyper Expert is still tanking the tower, though. I'm not sure he wants to do this. Argo might be able to find the kill back. Sid Volter doesn't take that extra tower shot, but Argo, at the very least, is going to be able to find a 1-for-1 Not dead yet, still on 1 HP. Finds the knockup on the Sid Voltor. Sid Voltor does get the charge in. The second tower shot comes through to Sid Voltor. Die, he dies! Argo finds the 2v1 in the top side.
That is very huge, so you gotta find a way to spread out the gold lead compared to what they were down. Kaisa 2-0, now Leone is getting a lot stronger.
Yeah, that is such a huge turnaround for Argo to find, as Hyper Expert spent so much time there on that dive. If they, at the very least, make it a 1-for-1, jungler dies, but Sid Voltor still gets to farm that wave, look to hit the plates, try and get extra gold out of that play, it's suddenly a massive disaster for Argo. But getting Sid Voltor down there means that no plates go over, no extra CS lead comes through, and that extra 300 gold in his pocket really evens out that play on the top side.
That is true.
We got Hyper Expert in the mid lane again. The miasma is not going to find its mark. Hyper Expert is going to get knocked back by the pillar, but that 620 passive means that should be able to just walk out, look for some kind of re-engage. I'm not sure that's exactly the play he wants. Argo on the top side as well, making a trade. Now with that Executioner's Calling in inventory, feeling a lot more confident. Take aggressive trades into the tech room.
I believe that Executioner's putting in a lot of work that was making the trades more even, I'd say, even with the Conqueror and the new healing that Hecarim now has.
Yeah, the combination of the Conqueror healing and that Shadows of Dread, something along those lines for his W. DZG is forced to flash away in the mid lane. Sid Voltor is being all-in by Argo here. Graveness is looking for the way to walk into this play, but doesn't manage to find it. It is just Sid Voltor taking plenty of damage now. Now the momentum shifted entirely reverse in the top lane. Argo with the ability to take these aggressive trades and make plays happen. Speaking of making aggressive plays happen, GVG forced the distortion away. Hope is going to pop the ghost and look to just get these last auto attacks in onto GVG. No mana Cassia, doesn't matter. Finds the auto attacks.
That was very close. I believe maybe GVG could have recasted the W to maybe go back to the middle of the lane, but I think regardless, he was probably just dead from that engagement.
He's going to find Hyper Expert here, so Voltor is here as well. The Fate Seal is not going to be managed to go all the way through Argo. Looking for the 2 versus 1 outplay with the Spirit. Get over the wall, but Sid Voltor follows him with the Shadows of War. Manages to pick up that last hit.
We were just talking about DZG being kind of the spearhead of these engagements. Now is flipped right back over to where we started.
Yep, that's the Caster Curse in action. Really nice aggressive plays from Imagine Shadows. Hyper Expert on the Sejuani, making plenty of plays happen. Only 50% KP right now, but those KP are where they need to be.
That is true, and I believe that as the game now progresses, Ocean Dragon spawn in 2 minutes. The Herald is still up. Both teams haven't opted to doing that yet, but I believe once the 14-minute mark hits, Hecarim gets his teleport. The team fight is going to be a menace for DZG.
Oh yeah, especially once he gets that Sunder in inventory, he should have the mana meme soon after that, as that item is relatively cheap, which is part of why Hecarim is so good right now. There's a potential for this horse to just run rampant in these team fights. GVG looking for a roam on the bottom side here. He's going to find a Hyper Expert, just proc a little bit of damage on him. It is Sejuani, so, you know, not too much. But getting the Aftershock out of the way for a potential fight. As we get another pause coming in. I did cast a person earlier. I apologize to everyone in the crowd, but you know, that's just how it is. Something I wanted to note that I'm kind of surprised by with all of the action we've had in the top lane is how little pressure there's been on this early Rift Herald. Normally we see teams rotating and putting a lot more pressure onto that first Rift Herald and trying to get the objective so they can grab platings, push a lane lead out of control. But the teams have put a lot more pressure into just the kills and just the fights themselves, as opposed to the objectives around it.
Which is kind of weird when you think about it. When you go back to the Hecarim and Sejuani 2v1 in Dion, when Argo got the double kill, you could say that they opted into it.
Well, we're going to have to put that on pause as Symphonic is forced to use the Demonic Ascension. Hyper Expert is down here, but Symphonic is now going to be able to get a little bit of extra time on that Ascension, but just walking away. That's the counterplay to Swain. Hyper Expert manages to walk out of range, which means Swain does not get to keep that ulti up forever. We are going to have a slight repeat as the Spectator gets itself back in order. We see Symphonic with the Demonic Ascension, Hyper Expert walking through. Now we should be back to live.
Quickly before anything else happens, back to what I was saying. Instead of opting for that 2v1 dive on Dion top, I feel like they maybe all probably could have just opted towards doing the red trail to give this Hecarim more ahead, but I guess they thought they maybe could have killed Beyond 2v1.
Yeah, and if they make that dive work, as we just see the normal top lane happening, the trade of health bars, if they make that 2v1 happen where the dive either happens cleanly or it's just a 1-for-1, maybe they can turn that play into a Rift Herald. But just the fact that they're going for that first as opposed to just looking for the Rift Herald, I think is potentially a misplay that it loses Hecarim a lot of gold in the long term.
I think also it sets back Yon because Yon then has to stay a lot further away from his team and has also have to walk up a lot further, which opens it up to more ganks. So
Gravies and Symphonic are here to look to pressure on the Hyper Expert. First chain is going to land with no stun coming out of it. Double stuns onto Grave News, forced to flash away. Symphonic is here for the follow-up though, gets the never move, forces to flash out of Casio. DZG tries to land that first chain, but doesn't manage to find the stun again. Detector John is here, has flash, but knows that there's quite a few members of DZG, so I don't think he's going to look for anything too out over the top.
I think
he's just trying to set up for this Ocean Dragon.
I think he wants a lucky. Kai'Sa does have their kill instinct. It's not that great as a range, but they can quickly turn this into a very quick 4v1 and just outright burst whoever he pulls.
Yeah, and now with Misfortune and Swain showing in the mid lane, it does mean that Imagine Shadows gets full control over the spot side scuttle and plenty of vision control over this second dragon. The Vision of Empire is going to spot out the dragon. And it looks like instead DZG is just going to trade it for this later Rift Herald as opposed to trying to contest the Ocean Dragon.
I think this is an okay play. It's only the second dragon. That's first for Imagine Shadows. I think this is a fine trade. What really will matter is what the next dragon is.
Yeah, the Soul Dragon is going to be very important here. And it looks like we're going to be dealing with Mountain Soul, which if you can get that on the likes of Hecarim, on the likes of Sejuani, suddenly it's so difficult for this Misfortune and for the LeBlanc to get the picks that they want. It's going to be very important that DZG does not give up more of these dragons. Speaking of giving up, Grave News is going to be spotted. A nice pillar to cancel out Sidvoltor's charge. Grave News is forced to burn the Subjugate to try and get away. The fear comes through. Sidvoltor just does not care about Argo's damage. Just walks on him. Face Shield is going to find two. A nice knockup. The immediate pullback and the charge forward. Kais is going to find the last hit on that play.
This is Season 12 Hecarim, boys. Divine Sunderer getting close to that mana immune. This man does not die.
Yeah, even with the anti-heal coming out from Argo, it is so difficult to make damage stick onto this Hecarim. Symphonic now forced to catch this wave and try and just stop the top tower from falling. As it is post 14 minutes, there are no more plates. That tower will go down very quickly if Hecarim is given time on it.
I think you will. I don't think at this point in the game, Hecarim has his Divine Sunderer. I don't think anyone can really match him unless two people from DZG go to match him. I think you should get this tower for free, honestly.
Potentially, once this Blade of the Ruined King is completed for Argo, there's a chance for some kind of contest, but like you're mentioning, this is Season 12 Hecarim. This is one of the best fighting champions, 1-versus-1, even AoE team fighters right now, just with the amount of sustain that he has. Anti-heal is going to be a must for DZG, which feels so bad because already the anti-heal items are not great and don't feel incredible to build, and just delaying your power spikes on other items even more so does not feel good.
No, it's not, especially on the Yon, that a champion that relies on these core items to be completed. Obviously, opting into the Executioners does help because you can go to Mortal Reminder to get more crit.
Oh, GVG might have taken a bad phase check. The gaze of Casio is not going to find the stun, so GVG will be able to walk away, but that is a full health bar gone, which means that probably GVG is going to be forced to recall.
Actually, he's opting to stay. I think they're trying to maybe go for a pick on this Blitzcrank. They're kind of grouping up towards it, or to just maybe just a clear vision of the dragon.
Argo is going to use that teleport on the top side, so will not have that. Detector John finds the hook on the Symphonic with silence as well. The flash over the wall. The Kai'Sa with the killer instinct, and the Casio just to make sure that there was no way for Symphonic to escape. That is 4 kills now over to Kai'Sa. This is potentially looking like a snowball away for the AD carry.
That was a very weird pathing the Symphonic took. It's kind of weird as to what he was trying to do there. I'm guessing he's going for deeper vision, but his teammates were running away. And actually, Beckham looking to maybe kill Yon again.
1v1 on the top side. It's the sustained battle. Blade of the Ruined King versus the Divine Sunder. The Fate Shield is going to find its mark, but Voltor survives with a sliver of HP, and now Hyper Expert is up here to support his top laner. Looking for the all-in. The Glacial Prison is not going to find its mark, though. Argo surviving for just a little bit longer with the red smite. The blue smite doing a lot of work. Argo looking for the knock-up. Hyper Expert forced to flash away as well. Voltor wants this charge, wants to find it in, but Argo with the outplay finds him. He gets the shutdown. Others defender on the bottom side. The whole time is going to channel. Not going to find Folio's mark, but he's going to just keep Detective John away. The stun finds two, but it's just a disengage. Cassio making sure the team can walk out of there safely. And with an impressive outplay on the top side, DZG comes out of that play ahead.
That was a very impressive play. DZG trying to reestablish control of this game. They are basically 3,000 gold ahead, but they are slowly clawing their way back. That was a pretty decent shutdown, I believe, onto the Hecarim. And then almost a good play on that dragon, but still, Imperial Imagine Shadows still kind of in control of this game.
Yeah, very good collapse on that bottom side of the map. But a good disengage from the Cassiopeia means that the play can't be made, but at the very least, it's not a losing play for DZG, which when you're behind in gold, is the kind of play that you need to have.
Yeah, and speaking of behind gold, it looks like Retro was actually forced to be used in the top lane. I can't imagine it being able to get a crash. But as soon
this is not a trade that Sid Voltor wants. Argo has that 13 stacked up. Sid Voltor is just going to die to this. Pulled back. Fate sealed.
That is a lot of damage, I guess. Now he was not expecting the amount of raw damage that Young could put out with the Blade of the Ruined King as well as a Noon Quiver. And I guess now top lane, kind of more of an even playing field now.
Yeah, that Rift Herald is looking for Archer with the tower, which means that first tower will fall. Credit going over to Trundle just because he dropped that Herald. But suddenly this is the real issue with the Heckrons. We're going to have to put that on pause. John is not going to be able to find the hook there. The Glacial Prison also going wide from the Sejuani. The pull back onto the Cassio. Plenty of damage coming through. That press the attack, forcing the flash and the locket out of Blitzcrank. And with that fight happening in the mid lane, no one was responding to the top lane push, which means the second tower will also fall in favor of DZG.
Very quickly, as the gold leave now just gone basically from 3,000 to now 1,000. DZG are on the dragon. Imagine Shadows is slowly responding, although Argo does not have teleport, so this will be possibly a 5v4.
And no teleports to be able to come in from either side. GVG has the flank, though. They can potentially look for something onto Hyper Expert. The pull is going to get them away from the chains. Hyper Expert doesn't manage to find the smite. A great smite from Brave News. Means that the dragon will be secured by GVG.
This is starting to look a lot better for the DZG fans. Actually, if we look at the gold, 2,000 gold lead onto Yon.
Yeah, the gold lead really being maintained and kept in the lead by this bottom lane lead that Kai'Sa has. Just the fact that this is a snowballing AD carry and one that can scale out of control if you allow her. But if DZG can put the picks down on her, it is a 2-item AD carry. But if Argo gets on top of her, if GVG finds the flank angle, the Kai'Sa can be taken out of the fight so fast.
True, but I think we're also kind of ignoring the mid lane. Look at this Cassiopeia. She already has her Archangels fully stacked as well as Leandries. When these main 5v5 teamfights happen, she's going to be a menace to society.
Look, it's gonna steal the red buff, the pink horn, guaranteeing that steal away. Definitely let's be forced to just put up the Sadamumu emo. We gotta fight on the bottom side again. Just these two top laners scrapping it out. Both of them very willing to just take whatever trade possible. And I did want to talk about it while we've got a chance to breathe. The advantages and the disadvantages of this Hecarim build. Because you do have so much sustain with this build, but you don't have a lot of raw, like, defensive stats around you. You really are relying on the healing to keep you alive. Or speaking of relying on healing, Symphonic is going to get ignited, tries to heal himself out of range of the Kai'Sa burst, but it's not going to come through the bullet time. It's going to force the flash out of Kai'Sa, though. The heal as well. Argo's here, the Fate Shield finds Kai'Sa somehow. I don't think that hitbox was really good. Evie is going to be able to survive just a little bit longer with the heal. Argo will get shut down. The shutdown gold picked up by Sejuani. Maybe just a bit of an overforce by DZG.
So many scrappy fights happening all at once. DZG are trying to get as far ahead as they can, and these fights are still very close despite them being only down now 2k. It's still very close fights on both sides.
Yeah, we're really waiting on this. Oh, that's
Oh, no.
that is a feels bad moment for every support player. You see that flash hook angle in your mind. You know it's there. You flash forward and the minion's sitting right on top of you.
That is very unfortunate. That's gonna hurt him a little bit. But I believe if he did hit that hook, Misfortune would be dead. So I could see the play.
With the team around him. So I don't hate the play. I think the play is one that's good to look for, especially with the Baron being up and with respawn timers being where they are now at 25 minutes. There's always a potential for that turn to be made and that force to happen, at least threatening the potential play. Sid Voltor is going to be found out by Zinfonic, who now has the Rylai's in inventory. He's just going to force the Ghost out of him with that slow. Blitzcrank is flashing over the wall with the Hex Flash. 7 Lesbian just using the extra bit of movement speed from that strut to stay just comfortably out of range of Blitzcrank. No Summoner's Force, but that is just a little bit of an awkward play.
A little bit awkward. But Mountain Dragon is up in a minute 50. DZG looking like they have a decent amount of vision setup. Looks like they do want to prioritize that to get them to that soul point. DZG is kind of going around. He might be looking for something maybe.
Yeah, this is really what GVG does in these mid-game situations. He looks for these flank opportunities. He tries to find a straggling member of the enemy team, someone who's rotating late, maybe looking for some sort of extra bit of farm pickup. Nice pullback on the soul from Argo means that the Cassio ulti will not find its mark. With no Petrifying Gaze available for the next decent amount of time. Good flash force by 9011 Detective means that there will be no flash on the enemy support. And GVG is going to be forced to dash away. Just plenty of quick fights happening, plenty of ultis flying. Hyper Expert not able to find the mark with the Glacial Prison there. That is the stopwatch forced out of Poe. The Dragon coming in at 45. That's potentially very big. Oh no! Definitely Lesbian walks into the hook. You had the dodge, but you didn't trust yourself. You step back into it, gets picked off, and now with 30 seconds on the Mountain Dragon, that's a very big pick.
That is very unfortunate. A lot is happening before this dragon, and I believe most of it is honestly in favor of DZG. A lot of not ultimates were used compared to Imperial Shadow using a good portion of their ultimates.
Over the wall onto Grave News, but I don't think that's exactly the member you want to look for a hit pick on. All of the verses coming down to the Hyper Expert. He is just deleted before the fight can start. Now Evie is forced to walk away. The teleport's coming in from Sid Voltor, but Symphonic putting in so much pressure just on this swing. There's the devastating charge to try and get in. Detective John finds the last hit onto Grave News. GG is forced to flash away as well, managing to keep this Kaisa alive just barely. Magic Shadow's doing a great job healing for their AD carry. That juicy shutdown is really the target for DZG.
Honestly, a little bit of a scrappy fight from both sides, but it was a 1-point in the end with both junglers, so both teams can't really opt in for the dragon.
Looking for the hook, he finds Symphonic. That's just going to be a deleted target. The bullet time is not going to find enough damage in this fight. Now the Pope is just pushing them off of their wave, and this should just be a turn onto the dragon for Imagine Shadows.
This is such a very, very back and forth game. One moment we think one team's winning, then in the next minute the other team's pushing in and just killing everything. Right now Imagine Shadows are back to a 4,000 gold lead, and this Kaisa is very strong.
Very close on that hook, but GVG thankfully not fully window shopping, so able to react and to walk away from it in time. It is worth mentioning something we weren't able to mention while we were going through the draft, is both of these teams are fighting for the ability to get into the playoff bracket. Right now, both of these teams are sitting near the bottom of the standings. Both of them are looking for the start of a momentum shift for themselves to get themselves into playoff contention, move themselves into the higher bracket, and maybe look to challenge the top of the ladder.
I believe when it comes to being in the lower brackets, it adds a little bit more pressure to the players, especially me, when in some of my experience. And you can kind of almost maybe see it from how they're playing. They're not really predicting more like not predicting, but more respecting the Blitzcrank possibility of these hooks being thrown out. And I think that's just mainly the pressure trying to get to them, maybe.
Red team's turret has been
Yeah,
destroyed.
Blitzcrank was a blind confidence pick from Detective John. His comfort is on these engage, pick, hook style of champions, the Nautilus, the Blitzcrank, the Amumu that we saw also banned out alongside that Nautilus, just trying to keep him away from comfort. We see him drop back to the Blitzcrank, and it's worked really well for him so far. We'll have to see if he can continue to have this level of performance. We'll see if DZG happen to keep walking into these situations where Blitzcrank can be successful, or if they can look to set up a team fight where it's much more difficult for Blitzcrank to be the kind of champion that he wants to be.
Well, so far what they're doing right now has been very well. Detective John has been able to get some really, I'd say maybe almost easy hooks, but has also landed very crucial hooks to get them where they are right now.
Now with DZG doing a little bit of NA around just to secure that first outer tier turret in the mid lane, open up the map for themselves a little bit, but in the meantime, Sid Voltor is putting plenty of pressure onto that onto that topside tower. Gonna pick up the tier 2 as DZG is starting up the Baron. There is full information from that Scuttle Crab. They know Sid Voltor is over the wall. They're gonna look for a turn onto the Kaisa, but Eevee is playing into this fight so well. Suddenly the burst is coming through. There's the Hecarim ulti onto the backline. The Regius finds the last hit onto Detective John, but Eevee is untouched in this fight. Kaisa is going off. It's a double kill for Kaisa. Argo trying to run away, but with the Spirit pulling him back, there is no escape. Eevee with the killer instinct in, plus the collector with the Acathian Rain. It's a triple kill for Kaisa, and that's gotta be the Baron for Imagine Shadows.
That was such a really good play from Imagine Shadows. The Maya was just shutting down the not letting him get close to the Kaisa, and then the huge Hecarim ultimate, which I believe all 5 of them just spelled immediate doom for DZG in this game.
Yeah, great here by Silverbeast, willing to sacrifice his life just to make sure that the play can happen. You can see him opting for these more defensive items now that he's finished that core of the Sunderer and the Manamune with the Frozen Heart, and what it looks like I would guess the Black Cleaver coming up next.
I could see the Black Cleaver, but I could also see maybe more, maybe a GA. I could see that as an item that he might opt into to just give him more survivability and to keep fighting even after he dies.
Let's see how he chooses to itemize, but we've been talking a lot about the bottom lane and the top lane. For good reason, this Kaisa is on 4 items, and the Hecarim is the meta staple pick that we've been worried about in terms of this game. But if we take a look over to the mid lane right now, I also want to point out Cassiopeia very quietly 2-0 and 4, 3 items completed, 6 stacks on that Dark Seal. There's a lot of stats coming through for that Cassio, and not needing to build boots means that she gets to be such a massive threat.
That's true, and if you look at the opposite side of it, GVG hasn't been able to get much going on for him, really. He hasn't really been able to find these really good flanks onto Kaisa or Cassiopeia. He's managed to do it like in the lane phase, but not really in the moment that matters.
Yeah, looking for more impact out of this LeBlanc. The Shadow Flame and what looks like a piece of a Death Cap in the inventory. GVG is looking for that flat Magic Pen plus the full AP. Void Staff be damned, just looking to burst down this Kaisa or the Cassio if he can get on top of them. But I will say that Imagine Shadows has been positioning in fights really well, just trying to make it so difficult for DZG to get into the fight. Green News is going to tank up the Glacial Prison, but the Bull Time is putting in so much work here. This might be the fight that DZG was looking for, but there's the huge Hecarim multi over the wall, and suddenly Kaisa is free-firing again. Argo tries to get in with the Fade Seals, but there just is not enough damage. It's a double kill for Hecarim. GVG is going to get picked up. It's a triple kill for Kaisa, and it's an ace for Imagine Shadows.
Another huge, insane ultimate from the Hecarim coming in to save the day and just honestly put the nail in the coffin for this game. The Imagine Shadows are 10,000 gold ahead. Kaisa on 4 items, possibly even on enough gold for 5th item. And just
looking with a casual 2,000 in inventory. It's still holding on to that Doran's Blade, I believe. There's just so much gold on this Kaisa. 6,000 ahead of our lane opponent. It's so difficult for DZG to find their way into these fights, because whenever they try to position for an objective, they have to walk into a Blitzcrank hook.
And not only a Blitzcrank hook, they also have to walk into a Miasma, a Sejuani, a Hecarim waiting to ult. There's so many things that DZG have to walk through just to get into an objective. But then if you look at how DZG positioned in that fight, they were they went into the fight really well until the Hecarim came in, and then that's when the disruption of Imagine Shadows team comp comes in. The Hecarim disrupted the misfortune. The might as well stop LeBlanc. Swain just couldn't do anything.
Yeah, this is such a difficult situation for DZG to be in, and it gets to a point in game where you're really thinking about game 2 at this point as a player, where you're like, okay, we can't see the gold lead, but you can feel that you are very far behind. You know the enemy team is on soul point, and you're in a position where it's nearly impossible for you to actually get to a fight. So you start thinking about game 2. Where do you go differently in the draft? Do you respect that Hecarim a lot more? Do you respect the Blitzcrank a lot more? Do you maybe ban that out over the Nautilus or over the Amumu? How do you look to play out that second draft? Because at this point, it's really just waiting for the last Nexus towers to fall.
I believe the Blitzcrank is more or less the catalyst for how Imperial Shadow got to where they are right now. A lot of really good hooks just got them in a really good position and caught out a lot of members of DZG.
Yeah, it is such a difficult spot to be in, because now you are, as a player, you're really just waiting for the enemy team to group up end to end. But with a situation like this, as both teams, when you have a lead, you don't want to give it up. You want to play as quote-unquote correct League of Legends as much as possible. You want to be playing for these picks, for the team fights. And speaking of team fights, Sid Volter is forced to ulti out of the fight with a beautiful ulti over the wall from the Cassio. Is going to find 3 stuns. The bullet time again, finding all this force, but there's just not enough damage over it. Eevee goes legendary. Definite Lesbian is forced to try and walk away from this one, but it is just hyper expert finding the ace, and you have to think that that's going to be the game.
I believe it is. They have a wave push in mid. They have a Sejuani and a Hecarim that have enough HP to tank. They have a Cassiopeia and a 5-item Kaisa. This is for sure the end of game 1.
Yeah, and a very back and forth for the first 10-15 minutes, but suddenly just explosive team fights from Imagine Shadows have found themselves with the game 1 win over DZG Arcadia, and will be looking to step into game 2 with that momentum. The Nexus falling, yeah, that is a concise, clear, and consistent win for Imagine Shadows. It's hard to say anything else about that game. The picks were good. They played around their team composition well. It looks clean.
I'd say clean is a okay word. Obviously, at the very beginning, there was a lot of scrappy fights, and honestly, it looked like it could go anyone's way. But at the end of the day, Imagine Shadows, the Blitzcrank hooks, just pull it off.
Yeah, they looked good. We are going to be taking a short break before we hop into game 2. We'll be right back with the draft of game 2 of DZG Arcadia versus Imagine Shadows. Don't go anywhere.
That's when I come alive.
I'm all the sins that you can't confess. I'm just your ghost if we're not undressed. A part of me wish that we never met, but you act like we never. Got too wasted in the bathroom of your parents' house. Then you kissed me in the backseat of a taxi ride. And we said things that were cheesy, but we meant them. There were feelings, and now you deny it. You're in love with the idea of me, but you're not sins that you can't confess. I'm just your ghost if we're not undressed. A part of me wish that we never met, but you act like we never. Got too wasted in the bathroom of your parents' house. Now you kissed me in the backseat of a taxi ride. And we said things that were cheesy, but we meant them. There were feelings, and now you deny it. You're in love with the idea of me, but you're not in my reality. Find it hard to even picture it, 'cause my reality ain't your reality, no.
And we are back for Game 2 of DZG Arcadia versus Imagine Shadows. After a very scrappy Game 1, we are getting into the ban phase of Game 2. And so far, nothing changing for Imagine Shadows, but DZG is going to take away the Blitzcrank.
Respect ban going away, and Imagine Shadows keeping the exact same bans. They're very comfort, or not really comfort, they're fine with what DZG threw at them, and they believe that they have an answer for whatever they threw out. Be interesting to see what DZG actually go for the last ban. It'll be interesting to see if they go for the hack room or if they try to pinch that support pool a bit more.
It gets to the point with a supports pool of all of these champions are acting in a very similar way. If you're thinking, okay, if these champions are going to pilot in very similar ways, do we care that much about pinching it down, or do we want to force them onto one of those champions in particular, that one that we can play around better? And it looks like DZG has opted to take away the Amumu. I have to imagine that Imagine Shadows will probably lock in Nautilus on this second or third round pick, but they are going to grab themselves the Sejuani in this first round pick again, just keeping that same first pick.
It could be possible, or DZG could be confident in maybe taking the Nautilus away from themselves and put more prioritize into their bot lane. But Udyr actually is going to be picked.
Yeah, Udyr managed to sneak his way through the pick ban, and that champion is another one that is pretty good right now ever since his most recent rework. A little bit more of the dad bod on him. The champion gets very, very tanky and provides a lot of AoE damage, slows, crowd control in team fights. For a simplistic kit, the champion looks really good.
I do agree, and he could be flexed towards the top in the jungle. But also Jinx is now going to be locked in. That's quite the difference from Misfortune.
Yeah, the Jinx blind pick is also very surprising, just given the comfort pool of Detective John being these hook style of champions. And if you're expecting a Nautilus, maybe even a Kaisa Nautilus, it's a little bit surprising to lock in the Jinx like that.
It is very much, which makes me think maybe they're going to go for their bot lane, go for the support as their last pick, maybe a Morgana for more protection for the Jinx, maybe Renata if they're feeling different. Because if you add in a Nautilus and a Sejuani, they both want to go in. What is Renata like? The enemy champions coming into her and just using her ultimate and her Q to push them away.
Renata loves to be the disengager, to be forcing the enemy team to engage onto her. And as that Nautilus is going to get locked in, just as we expected, Imagine Shadows keeping a very similar draft structure to what we saw in the last game, just swapping out the Blitzcrank for the Nautilus. I wonder what DZG will lock in, either as a potential counterpick to that Nautilus, or if they want to grab something else. They are going to look for the counter to Nautilus but instead going to look for something a little bit more classic. They're going to grab the Rakan.
It's a very weird bot lane duo. I still believe Kai'Sa and Nautilus will just have complete control over this lane because Jinx did get quite a hefty base health nerf after the durability patch. So I believe it'll just be mainly Kai'Sa favored unless the Jinx gets very, very far ahead.
Yeah, this is a lane where DZG doesn't want to interact really with the bottom lane of Imagined Shadows. They want to just say, hey, you guys can have lane domination, you can have prio all you want, we're playing with Jinx, we will scale up to the late game, we'll have that team fight monster, we'll have Rakan for potentially insane engages, looking to just play the team fights out how they want to, but they're not going to let Imagined Shadows have either of the solo laners that they had last game, taking away the Cassio and the Hecarim.
A lot of respect bans going away, and kind of going back to where they want Jinx and Rakan to just kind of scale up. It's a matter of getting there. Last game, they kind of got to a point where they could somewhat easily just farm up and scale a little bit, but then unfortunately Blitzcrank hooks happened, a lot of scrappy team fights, and then eventually Imagined Shadows just gets ahead. So I want to know if DZG gets a way or a champion to get them ahead.
This looks like it is going to be the potential one for them. A comfort pick for GVG in the mid lane. The Echo is locked in blind versus Imagined Shadows. Definitely a champion that is counterable, but with the amount of skill expression that we've seen GVG pull out with that champion, this is definitely him jumping back to comfort and saying, hey, this is a champion I know and love, this is one that I can pilot really well into a lot of matchups, I'll play it out.
I do like picking GVG here, because that still opts up for Udyr to be kind of flexed to the top or jungle. But it will be very interesting to see how that goes. I believe Udyr into Sejuani could be okay, especially depending on what he builds, but the Malphite gets picked. This spells disaster for Jinx already.
Yeah, a very, very different style of top laner for Imagined Shadows as opposed to the constant fighting of Hecarim. It is the I'm going to stand in lane and look menacing of Malphite. And into the Jinx, like you said, that's a very much a disaster because I see 4.5 enemy champions that can dive on top of Jinx and say, hey, you're really not allowed to play the game.
No, especially as the game progresses, you know, Orianna's going to start scaling up, and then Malphite is just going to be able to just walk through the front line of DZG and just press R on Jinx, and she'll blow up.
I do have to say, though, with that Alawi locked in, this DZG composition is definitely one that you are not 100% comfortable just running at. With Alawi, Rakan, and with Jinx, the potential for counter engage and for kite is really high. I like the idea. I'm just worried that the ball delivery system that is Malphite is going to make it so difficult for Jinx to play this game.
That's true. But I believe it should be a little bit easier for Argo to play in this matchup, because I believe Alawi, quite a decent lane bully. If she can land those Spirit E's, then she will be able to just actually outright win the lane, hopefully without any interference with the Sejuani. So it should be a little bit easier for DZG to possibly play this game out if the Malphite gets behind.
Yeah, but that's the question of, can they get him behind? It is a champion that, even if you get behind, you still have the potential for the utility in that mid to late game team fighting, where you can say, hey, I'm still Malphite. If I catch R on like 2 or 3 people, they're dead.
That is true.
I do apologize for the silence here as my nose has started bleeding on me, so I'm just grabbing a tissue really quick so I can have that handled. We are just waiting for the teams to start up with the client draft itself just to make sure we know where everything goes, but I don't think there's anything too out of the ordinary that we're expecting to swap up in terms of lane assignment at all.
I don't believe so, no. It is going to be interesting to see how Udyr works into Sejuani. I know Udyr is a lot better of a champion in the jungle rather than top lane. I believe he'll just mainly go for a more tankier oriented build. It will be interesting to see how Alawi actually itemize. I know from some experiences, Alawi, from what I've seen, does go Divine Sunderer, maybe opts into maybe more of a split push orientation and goes Hullbreaker. But I think that might not be the very optimal thing to do. I believe team fighting, DZG's team fight comp is probably it's a lot more better, I'd say, than Imagine Shadows if Imagine Shadows comes in with no ultimates, no summer spells. I think it'll just be easier in general for DZG to play.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Argo opt for something like Divine Sunderer plus Black Cleaver just to try and make Jinx's life a lot easier. Alawi is a champion that can apply Black Cleaver really, really easily. Despite a lot of magic damage coming out from this DZG comp between the Udyr and the Echo, you really need to allow Jinx to play the fight how she wants to play it out, or else she's just going to be useless.
And I think it's going to be hard for her to play how she wants to when you have a Malphite just walking up on you. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they actually allow Jinx to play this type of game. Like you said.
Yeah, this is the worrying situation for this DZG comp. There is a very minimal amount of standard peel between Rakan and, I guess, Echo a little bit if he positions his W in a way to peel for Jinx. But it really is just on Rakan to not only peel for the Jinx, but also to be the counter engager to say, hey, we're starting a fight now. I'm pressing the quickness. I'm pressing the grand entrance. We're going in. But if he's doing that, he's not sitting on top of Jinx and keeping her alive.
Makes things very difficult. And then could say that also Udyr could be sort of just be used mainly as maybe a secondary peel for the Jinx, but Udyr wants to get in and cause as much disruptions as he can, because once he gets 1 to maybe 2 items, he becomes really tanky and a nuisance to kill. So it'll be quite interesting to see how Imagine Shadows play around what DZG has against them.
Yeah, and while we wait for this last little bit of the client draft and the spectator delay to finish up, I did want to ask, how's your solo queue climbing been going recently? Have you been putting in the time in your ranked games?
I've been trying, but I'm kind of falling short a little bit. But I'm just
not seeing 100% of the results that you really want to see.
Not really. No, I think I'm missing something.
I know exactly what you're missing, and for our second sponsor of tonight, Dreadso Gaming is proud to be sponsored by and be partnered with MetaFi. MetaFi is a coaching service that can help you get to the right coach that you need to reach the goals that you want to reach. The MetaFi supports games like Valorant, Rocket League, and obviously League of Legends, as we're talking about here tonight, along with a handful of other games. And if you go to the link in chat and use that link below, you can get $10 of additional credit after completing your first booking, so you can start climbing to your dream rank today. We're going to take a short break before we hop into Game 2, and we'll see if DZG Arcadia can bounce back and tie up this series, pull that momentum into Game 3. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Back everybody to tonight's coverage of DZG Arcadia versus Imagine Shadows, and we are in game 2. It looks like both teams are just setting up for a very classic 5-point defense.
Right, and when we go back, if we go away from the 5-point, we start looking at the items. Malphite actually opting in for Adorn's Ring as well as Arcane Comet, kind of going for a little bit more of a bully in the lane, but also just to sustain in his mana. With when Malphite starts getting in higher levels, if he opts into level up his Q, that becomes quite a huge mana chunk. So it'd be also interesting to see if that might be an AP Malphite, maybe with Everfrost and then straight into tank. But I believe it'll probably defeat full tank.
I would be really surprised if we saw it go fully into AP. We have hit a little bit of issues with DZG's AD carry tonight. We saw them get substituted out in the first game just because their internet was having issues. So if we see a couple of pauses in this game, it's nothing too surprising. But we do have their starting AD carry back for them tonight, which is a good sign.
It is a good sign, and we'll see if maybe there's some different change in how they play when it comes to these mid to late game team fights. Wondering if maybe their current AD carry is more leading the charge as to what to do in these team fights or also in this early game play. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, back onto the Malphite topic. I do expect to just see the Comet and the Mana Flow and the Doran's Ring just to make sure that Malphite has a comfortable enough laning phase, because if you give Alawi space to farm and to play the lane how she wants to and sit back in it comfortably, it can become a very, very difficult lane for a tank to play through. So the Comet plus the Mana Sustain is probably just to make sure that Malphite has the potential to make trades happen instead of being forced to just walk away from Alawi anytime.
Most likely, and it's mainly also he also wants to try to make sure Alawi doesn't get too far ahead. So it is probably a smarter way to go to Doran's Ring, because like we were talking about in draft, Alawi in these team fights, it's going to be very hard for Imagine Shadow to actually do what they want to do, and that is to dive this Jinx.
Yeah, they do really need Malphite to be... While Malphite really is just a ball delivery system in this game, making sure that Orianna Ball and the rest of the team can follow up onto the Jinx, it is better if your Malphite has, like, a Frozen Heart, a Frozen Fist, I should remember the name of that item, Iceborne Gauntlet, Frostfire Gauntlet, that's what they changed the name to. First hook in the bottom lane is going to go a little bit wide as John goes for a nice knock-up in return from Definite Lesbian, getting a little bit of damage onto the Kaisa, but a little bit of damage traded back in response.
A little even trade. A little even. DZG actually.
DZG potentially in danger, but Hyper Expert is going to flub the flash Q a little bit, which means DZG will get to escape with his life, and that's another flash and ghost burned in the early game for DZG.
DZG getting very low, a really good hook.
Hook is going to find Vanisphere. Knight's down onto Definite Lesbian with the Guardian Shield. Rakan should just be able to walk out of this one okay with the potions in inventory. Able to get some of that health back.
A lot of trades going on once again. A lot of lanes going in favor of Shadow.
The Definite Lesbian. The Kila's going to be burned from Vanisphere this time around. As the Imagine Shadow bot lane hits level 3, there is no extra follow-up from DZG bot lane.
Right now, Imagine Shadow doing really good work in this early game. Doing a lot of really good trades.
Hyper Expert is here. There's the flash onto Definite Lesbian and onto Vanisphere. The hook is going to find Jinx. Now with no flash and now with the stun following up, Vanisphere survives on the sliver of HP. Eating Predator does get the last hit. First blood goes to Kaisa.
This is really good early game being played out by Imagine Shadows. They're really trying to get ahead, and they're currently doing it. Orianna bullied DZG very much in the mid lane. Kaisa now on that first blood kill. It's honestly slowly looking like a repeat of last game. But again, Argo making some really good work in this top lane, trying to zone this Malphite off of CS and just get a lead.
Yeah, this should be a much more comfortable laning phase for Argo. Decidedly in the lane bully position, Sid Voltor now having to sit back with low mana, low HP, and just being forced to play the tank into lane bully matchup with another Tesla Spear that's going to land. Argo has managed to find these really nicely, but just forcing Sid Voltor to sit so far back in lane and already establishing a near 12 CS lead for him.
You almost have to feel bad for this Malphite. He's very low HP, and actually looked like they're setting up for a dive on this Malphite to
This
try
is
to
a
get.
risky dive, but Grave News is here. He's going to look to just grab that stun, and with the Tesla Spirit as well, Argo will find the last hit. Grave News walks out of the tower. Beautifully executed dive from DZG. Oh, Vanisphere, this is not the situation you want to walk up in. No flash, no heal. Kaisa is there. Nautilus picks up the last hit, but that is such a huge wave pushing into the Imagine Shadows bottom lane. This is a disastrous position to be in.
That is true. Sorry for going away a little bit, but yes, Jinx right now is in a very, very rough spot. Being 0-2, especially for how weak early on Jinx is compared to the Kaisa, is going to be very hard for her to get back into this game. She's already an entire level down, and looks like that wave is going to be, no, they're actually kind of holding it a little bit, trying to vacuum out whatever hopes Jinx has left in this game, honestly.
Yeah, really just trying to make sure that Jinx loses as much out of this wave as possible. And this is the thing that we were worried about when we saw that blind pick Jinx. We already knew that Evie and John played such an aggressive Kaisa Blitzcrank lane last game. So it's not surprising to see them pick up Kaisa Nautilus, which is really just a better version of that lane with the ability to do more in the laning phase. So the Jinx picks was kind of concerning, and this is what we were concerned about. Just the fact that you can see how far back Vanisphere has to stand to be safe in this lane and to not give up any more deaths.
And it makes you wonder what they're doing on, what they're thinking about in draft. What, did they maybe think the Jinx would be a lot better answer to this Kaisa? Did they think the Rakan would be, were they expecting an Nautilus and they were preemptively thinking about doing the Rakan? It's very interesting to think about what they were thinking about in this draft.
Argo is on the receiving end of a bit of an awkward trade here, as in any way it makes it hard to hit the Tesla Sphere, but he will find it. Dane's level 7 is going to pop the Leap of Faith as well, look to just get as much damage on the Malphite as possible. Hook on the bottom side of the map, he is going to miss. Sid Voltor is going to try and just survive this all-in as much as he can. A little bit of alcove gaming and a sidestep from that Tesla Sphere again means he will be able to survive.
I don't know if a good play by Sid Voltor manages to actually walk out with it, even without using the ultimate. Could maybe look for a play on Argo if he gets a little bit greedy and goes for a tower dive.
It is not going to find its mark on the bottom lane. Doing a little bit of saving the precedent down there, just making sure Nautilus can't find his mark again. Yeah, with the Unstoppable Force still in inventory, if a Hyper Expert can find his way up to the top side, now with no Leap of Faith from Alawi, oh, there's the Unstoppable Force looking for the all and finds the 1 versus 1 onto Argo, but now we got a gank in the bottom lane. We've got the phase rush popping from Grave User looking to get on top of Kaisa, and he's going to be able to walk away. The hook doesn't find its mark, but John is just going to be able to walk away from that one as well. Again, nicely executed disengage from the Imagine Shadows bot.
That was very well played by Sid Voltor, and actually, Detective John looking for a little play.
Vanisphere still with no flash, has the heal, but I don't think it's going to save him. That's another kill going over to Kaisa. Definitely being forced to flash away. Grave News does have the flash, but I'm not sure he'll have to burn it here. Potentially might be forced to use it if they continue to chase, but they are not going to keep it up. Orianna's just going to be forced out of the mid lane with no mana, so she's going to take a comfortable recall and be fine with that. But this is a very similar situation to we saw in game 1 in this bottom lane.
So we're currently 1,000 gold ahead in favor of Imagine Shadows. Looking for GVG again, actually, but the controller will spot him out. Interesting that they're not opting for the Ocean Dragon. I guess they assume they want to play a little bit more safer, play a little slower, keep doing what they've been doing. Just get these really nice, scrappy fights, get good picks, get good CS leads. And it's just really well played, honestly.
Yeah, it is a bit of a disastrous start, especially since Vanisphere had to start on the bench because of those internet issues, and now it's coming into a situation like this that has to be not exactly demoralizing, but just a situation that does not feel comfortable to jump into. Evie and John already have that momentum from game 1. They're already warmed up and feeling really good about their position in game 1, let alone coming into game 2.
I think that plays a lot in the grand scheme of things. Not playing in game 1 does hurt a little bit in terms of like how you are prepared to play, because he doesn't know how EV lanes. He doesn't know how Detective John plays lane, so it can be very difficult for. I'm sorry. It's gonna be very difficult, especially later on. You know how does EV play in team fights
Shockwave in mid lane. GVG is going to be forced to put that point in his ulting and burn it. Pope is going to drop the Ghost as well. GVG looking for the re-engage. Drops the Ignite. Has that W coming up for the shield. But Pope finds the last hit. Flashes away just to make sure he will not die in exchange. That is a solo kill in mid lane for Popes.
That was actually really well played by Popes. Baits and GVG to go back to the sun, then flashes away. And just get these Orion autos do so much damage.
Grave News and Definite Team are going to be spotted on this dragon, but I think it's a little too late for any sort of a steal to come through. So that will be the Ocean Dragon. It's guaranteed to go over to DZG. And with the Cloud Dragon spawning second, we have one of 3 very exciting Soul Dragons to come up.
That is true, but also it might take some time because Cloud Dragon, not really the greatest of the 5. So it'll be interesting to see if they really put that much priority into getting it. I imagine maybe instead of opting into Cloud Dragon, they'll choose Rift Herald over that. Try to maybe get Argo, maybe GVG, but a little bit further into this game.
I think it's GVG. He's going to catch that Glacial Prison from Hyper Expert again, but with the Echo W and with that passive, he will just be able to sprint himself away and be fairly comfortable. Grave News is down here trying to support bottom. In the meantime, Sid Voltor has actually walked his way down. They're going to drop that depth charge onto Venusphere, but Grave News is here for the counter. Sid Voltor looking to be on top of Force Finds 2, but he is not in the fight just yet. It's just a 3v3 right now. Sid Voltor is so tanky on this Malphite, though, in the early game, and Jinx is just not able to output the damage. And overall, it's just a trade of summoners and ultimates. No one really coming out super far ahead in either exchange.
That was quite a very good, a really smart play, honestly, from Voltor to go walk down towards the bot lane, try to get the kill Jinx, and now he will teleport back to top lane to catch that wave. But I think that was a really good play from Mad Shadows, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did that again, either before or even after the dragon has spawned, to try to get this Jinx even further behind.
I will say I do like the idea behind it, but if you just look at the plates that are being taken down the top side, we're going to have to put a pause on that. As Venusphere, again, caught by the hook. Definite Lesbian doing a great job attempting to peel away the Kaisa and the Nautilus, but this is what happens when Kaisa and Nautilus get ahead. They just get to play as aggressively as they want.
That's true, and back to what you were just about to say, I'm assuming the tower plane and the top lane, Argo has got 3 of them so far. He's already on his mythic item.
Yeah, 3 top lane tower planings is even in gold with the Kaiser, who has 2 kills and a 20 CS lead. And granted, with the extra kill with Argo's inventory and with the CS lead, Grave News is up here to support. Pops that phase rush, has the awakened ulti there. It's an extra stun onto the Malphite, but it is a fairly tanky Malphite, so it's going to be very difficult to make that happen. GVG with no mana, his ulti forcing the mid lane, using that passive move speed to try and get away. A nice sidestep, but Popes will find the last auto attack. It's another solo kill in the mid lane against GVG.
Very unfortunate. And that was very unfortunate. It's actually Hyper Expert looking onto the Argo.
Under tower. Sid Voltor has no health, no mana to make this play continue, though. Hyper Expert does find the Glacial Prison, but there's the Leap of Faith. Has to flash away. And that felt like a bit of a desperation play from the jungler of Imagine Shadows, trying to bail out this top lane as much as possible.
Very desperate. Actually, it looks like he's going back in, actually. Argo
Yeah,
doesn't
now
have
with no
it.
Leap of Faith available, with no ulti available for either of them. This is a very dangerous play to make. Laui known for her proficiency in 2 versus 1 situations. She gets the Test of Faith onto Hyper Expert, trying to get extra damage in, pops the Spirit, and comes out of that play ahead again. Just so difficult for both of these tanks to try and play into a Laui.
Look at the Jinx Rocket. Actually just barely misses Hyper Expert.
Oh, but Grave
Not
News
great.
is here, and Definite Lesbian has roamed up as well. Grave News find a stun, gets the Wild Claw extra damage in, and there's the Awakened Phoenix stance as well. Grave News finds the last hit. No assist for Argo, but now Sid Voltor is potentially in trouble if they want to look for it. But speaking of in trouble, Venusphere abandoned on the bottom side of the map, and now Grave News is similarly abandoned on the top side. Popes with a good roam to protect his top laner. Shockwave is going to find its mark on the one. Definite Lesbian is looking for the counter engage, though. Gets the grand entrance onto 1, but there's no extra follow-up from GVG as he'd already used his W to try and peel out the jungler. And that's a very losing play across the map, as with Venusphere dying, that is first tower going down in favor of the Imagine Shadows bottom lane.
That has been a little bit of miscommunication. Definitely Lesbian wanting to go for a little bit of more of a play while GVG want to try to get out. But look at the difference in bot lane. Kai'Sa already on their mythic item, 3-0-1. With 40 CS lead ups against the Jinx. The spot lane back to where they were last game. They were dominating this lane.
Yeah, the players may have changed, but the situation stays the same. Jinx does have, I would say, the scaling advantage, arguably, just because of the kind of champion she is. If she gets one reset in the fight, she can pop off. But it's just a matter of getting to that point. Like we saw in last game, Miss Fortune had a couple of great bullet times, but just didn't have the itemization behind her to make the damage really stick and really count. So Jinx can end up in a very similar situation where she gets to one item, maybe gets to two, but by that time, Kai'Sa will already be on 3 or 4.
That's true, and especially with Jinx, even with 2 items, it's still very hard for her to kind of play this game, especially if the opposition has 3 to maybe 4. It's very hard for her to deal damage, especially without the IE. Honestly, just becomes more or less just a BB gun at this rate. Even with those rockets and crits, it's going to be really hard for her to actually do damage to maybe even get a reset at all in the fight.
Yeah, especially into these PP tanks like the Sejuani and like the Malphite, especially because in this game, Malphite really is allowed to stack armor, as he's not incredibly worried about the kind of damage that the Udyr is going to be putting out. While Udyr does have like good magic damage, he's still building tank items, and he's still going for the Sunfire build, as we have another pause, as there was a bit of a disconnect from the Imagined Shadows bottom laner this time around. We can take a look at the state of the game. 1 dragon to 1, but still 3,000 gold down for DZG right now. It is a mountain to climb if they want to pull themselves into a situation, not only to like keep themselves in the series, but just to get them to a point to get to game 3.
And it looks really hard to get back to this game. Echo's down 1,000 gold. Kai'Sa is up 2,000 gold. The only real advantage in gold is they have is the top of the jungle, with Udyr being up 900, which, I mean, yeah, granted, Udyr gets more tanky, but other than that, Argo, he needs to get into some of these team fights, and that's really where he's going to start to shine. So it'll be interesting to see how DZG actually get that lead and actually try to get their way in the back of this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough hill to climb for them to step into this game. But there are shutdowns for them to collect on the mid and on the AD carry. If they can find these priority targets and can dive on top of them, it is possible for them to get gold onto priority targets. If the mid laner, if GVG, if Vaynosphere can pick up the gold, it can skyrocket them back into this game and can make it a lot easier for them to pilot it out. But it's a lot of ifs, it's a lot of potential, it's a lot of maybe, and we're really hoping that DZG can pull it out. But after the performance in game 1, it's looking difficult.
It really is, especially how MetaShadows play these type of team fights. They position themselves to start the fight, but then the way they re-engage after DZG try to counterattack is really nice. They're more calm and collective. They know what to do, basically. Like if we go back to last game, Hecarim had really good counter engages with his ultimate, and that won them the fights even after they started it.
Yeah, and with that, Cloud Dragon being grabbed by the side of Imagined Shadows, it is going to be the Hextech Dragon picked up for... It is going to be the Hextech Soul picked up for the map. So we have the access to the Hex Gates, we have the Hextech Dragons, we do have the Spectator delay coming through as Riot Client works perfectly. You've heard it all before.
It'll be interesting to see how late this game goes, especially with the Hextech being the new Soul. If Imagined Shadows get Hex Drake, it almost just spells doom. But if DZG can manage to claw the way back into the game, get a bit of a lead, and possibly get these dragons, then the chances of winning this game go a little bit higher.
Yeah, especially just given the raw stats that the Hextech Dragon gives, that ability haste and that attack speed, it's such high value for everybody on the map, because there's not a champion in the game that cannot take advantage of ability haste or of attack speed. One or the other, your champion is going to love it. Or both in a lot of situations. So if DZG can find themselves some miracle fights, maybe a couple of picks before the fights happen, as we got a fight on the top and on the bottom side, Argo's just full tanking his Orianna without a care in the world, just really wants to take this pink ward, as the top lane Sid Voltor was forced to walk away from the play. No ulti or flash expended from him, but still forced to walk away from the wave, at least for the time being, and Hopes is similarly forced away from his own wave.
There is a lot going on, but it looks like MetaShadows are going up towards the Herald, which Mainly to be free. Green Tractor almost coming a little bit late. Maybe possibly a steal. But a lot of trades going on. DZG are kind of capable of trying to get these little small skirmishes and are able to fall back a little bit. But I'm pretty sure when it gets to more or less actual team fights or 5v5s or 4v4s, I think Mad Shadows are just going to start dominating.
Yeah, they have to look for situations where they are at a numbers advantage and can be in these unfair fights and maybe look to give Venusphere last hit, maybe look to give GVG a last hit on one of these shutdown golds. But until they get to that point, it's going to be so difficult for them to actually find their way into this game.
Sure. It's just when you look at the items, Kai'Sa's getting really close to I believe that's going to be the collector. Maybe it could be. Well, actually, no. It probably is going to be a collector. Oriana's already starting to stack the tier. There's Serrated Dirk on Kai'Sa. Being still only just on that Kraken and Dagger. So it's going to be a hard. It's still going to take a long time before DZ can actually get an opportunity to actually get these shutdowns onto their main carries.
Yeah, and now with Malphite having that mythic in inventory and having the extra bit of armor from those plated steel caps is a lot harder for Argo to actually find winning trades in this bottom side. We are going to pop that first Herald into the mid lane. I don't think we're going to be able to actually see the second Herald in this game as the Baron is spawning in about a minute. The Herald should be taken down. I'm not sure if it will actually get the tower. It looks like it was killed before it managed to take down the full tower, so no real value coming from Herald from either game in this series, interestingly enough. With all these scrappy fights, again, the minimum amount of objectives taken.
I think that kind of speaks a little bit of how Magic Shadows want to play. They, by the looks of it, they probably prioritize more over actually getting the kills rather than actual objectives. But at the same time, after they've kind of solidified their own lead, then they start going for these objectives and start giving a little bit more priority over it, and kind of bleeding out the other team's chances of actually getting back into games.
Yeah, but for right now, we do have a bit of a slowdown as nice flash away from Venusphere cancels out the Nautilus hook, trades a flash for a flash. And honestly, at this point in the game, just not dying is a win for DZG.
That's true, and I've not actually seen that Nautilus flashing back there.
1 versus 4 situation for Argo. The Glacial Prison is not going to find its mark. Argo does have the Leap of Faith, but I think it's a little too late. Eevee's going to find the last hit on that one again, picking up more gold for this Kai'Sa.
A little too far pushed up, not a lot of vision going on. He's honestly, that's kind of a really bad misplay for Argo. Granted, Dragon's up in 30 seconds. He will be up. He does have the teleport, but he won't have the ultimate, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult. I wouldn't be surprised if DZG honestly gave up this dragon and just keep farming, because that's honestly what they need to do. Like you said, not dying is the name of the game. They just need to scale.
Yeah, important to note also that Argo has opted for that Hullbreaker style of build, that split push like we were talking about earlier. So he is fully itemized into just playing the mid-game, and Venusphere walks too far forward with nothing to find. It's another kill for Kai'Sa.
Very weird as to why he was honestly walking there. This is honestly just probably a disaster. 3,000 gold lead, but it honestly feels like a lot more. Magic Shadows starting the dragon. Kai'Sa most likely has collector, maybe even another pickaxe. Nope, just double daggers. Actually, opting in for the I believe the last wish.
Lord Dominix is what it
Lord
looks like
Doms,
to be the next item for Kai'Sa. I don't hate it. I think there's a lot of health coming through from the Udyr and from the Alawi. In Lord Dominic's regard, just as an item, gives a lot of value on its own, so I think it's pretty good to pick up. I personally prefer it over Collector, but I know a lot of players really like the value that the raw stats of Collector gives. So I get that argument. I think Lord Dominic's is better, but
I do agree
sounds like
with you,
something, do the math behind it.
Well, a lot of math is involved, especially with a champion like Kai'Sa who wants that Q evolve early on.
Yeah, it is.
Lord Doms doesn't give the Q evolve, but Collector does early on.
Yeah, LDR won't give the Q evolve until you actually complete the full item, but if you just have the Serrated Dirk from the Collector, you'll evolve your Q on that, I think level 9, I think is the earliest you can get it.
I believe you are correct.
At the very least, it used to be level 9. It may have changed just with how the durability update and how the item changes have changed around stats and items and runes and whatever, but there's a lot of arguments being made for how Kai'Sa should be building. But in this case, when you have this much extra gold in your pocket, you can go for the full build collector. You can grab your pieces of your LDR. You can get it before your Infinity Edge because you are so far ahead of the rest of the map.
Yeah, I mean, 3,000 gold ahead of Jinx. She can basically just build whatever she wants. I think the collector, honestly, early on is actually a little bit better, just because they don't get DZG, the Udyr, and the Alawi don't have that much armor, especially early on. So the collector has a little bit more value.
Yeah, and right now we are in a bit of a lull state, just the gold lead staying even at around 3,000, which is a good situation for DZG. If the gold lead doesn't accelerate farther, if they can allow Argo to just be the split push threat to take down these towers, it's a good situation for DZG. They can get more gold in their pockets. They can have the potential win condition of, okay, we're stalling the team fights. We're not looking to win them. We just want to make sure that they don't have a chance to one-shot us before they can respond to our split pusher, as DZG is going to get pulled in by the shockwave. Has to burn that ulti on himself as well. Argo, in the meantime, on the bottom side, is happily beating away at that test of spirit onto Sid Voltor. And right now, it's just a split push win condition for DZG.
That is true, but I believe it is a little bit easier for them to actually have that be their win con, because Jinx, very far ahead. It's going to be very hard for them to actually win in these team fights. So I think that they really just have to rely on Argo to do the split push things. Although Sivolter is really tanky, so it's actually really hard for Argo to actually get good trades.
Hopes is here. Argo pops the leap of faith on himself, looking to get all the damage in onto Hopes, just totally ignoring Sid Voltor, but now with the unstoppable force, Hopes is going to find that one. Though with two people showing on the bottom side, there might be the potential for the pick on to Hyper Expert here. He gets a nice blast cone over the wall, means he will be able to survive and no pick going into this Baron.
Actually, I think these actually can actually start the Baron. They did chunk out quite a few members.
Yeah, it is a lot of health lost on Hyper Expert. He is just above half HP right now. Detective John will spot this one out. It looks like they're not going to try and commit to it, as Sivolter is teleporting behind them. Nice flash away from Vaynersphere, but the positioning is so awkward for this Jinx. Popes is trying to chase it down, but a beautiful peel from Definite Lesbian is going to keep Jinx alive. Great news, also stalling plenty, but a beautiful shockwave is going to find 3. GDG pulls himself back over the wall, but Vaynersphere has found one reset, is looking for more, just trying to hide out with that Jinx passage. Finally, Rakan will go down. GDG looking for some kind of pick on the backside, but Detective John spots that one out. It's a double kill going over to Eevee. But that is a kill going over to Vaynersphere. And that's gold in their pocket, and that's the kind of fight you want to see from DZG, even if overall it is losing, as Brave News walks up for some reason, manages to walk away, but I'm not sure he needed to do that.
Very, very decisive fight from Mad Shadows. It looked like it could have turned a little bit. Grave News putting in work, which is how tanky it is, and then Vaynersphere just gets blown up in a couple autos from the Jinx. So it's very interesting.
Again, the Glacial Prism is going to go wide. Argo just getting so much damage onto these beefball tanks, but that ulti is going to run out fairly soon, and he can't manage to find the lethal on any of them. Grave News just trying to delay recalls right now so this inhibitor can fall, but Argo is just unkillable. Neither of them can actually do damage to the Alawi. Definitely Lesbian finds his way in onto the backline here, but Grave News is the only damage here just yet. GVG has not found his way in. Kai'Sa goes dominating now. GVG has the ulti for themselves. Looks good. Back. Picks up the shutdown gold. That's a huge turnaround for GVG. They find 2 kills for themselves. A massive amount of shutdown gold. And Argo is still running a train on this bottom lane. Finds the inhibitor to go down. The Jinx Rocket is going to go wide, but GVG eventually will be able to pick up this Nautilus. I assume at some point, as there is no mana left on this poor support. GVG gets the dash in, picks that one up. It's a triple kill overall for GVG, and so much gold going into the pockets of that Echo.
That was such a great play by GVG. Managed to get a triple kill as well as a shutdown on both the Kai'Sa and the Orianna. When you look at it, Magic Shadows overstayed a little bit. They kind of played themselves with how
no smite here.
Looking.
DZG actually has to walk away and wait for Grave News to arrive. They're going to keep the aggro on the dragon, just pull it all the way out of the pits. Hyper Expert can't get in. The dragon will finally go down, but it's solid! Hyper Expert finds the smite! somehow manages to pick that one up. It will be traded for Sid Volter. Vaynersphere finds the last hit on that one, which is really nice for him. But a beautiful steal from Hyper Expert means that the game will continue.
That is very, I will say, not as a jungler player, but that is very demoralizing. Getting a very crucial objective smited away from you it's gonna, honestly, it just makes the game a lot harder, especially within the next 5 minutes. Baron is going to be the only objective up, but when 5 minutes come by, Men in Shadows, they get the Hex Drake, it's almost game over, honestly.
Yeah, getting to that soul point is so important for Imagine Shadows. If they can get the soul, it's just so impossible for Jinx to play these fights out, even with the rapid fire cannon providing that extra range. The slow on that soul makes it so difficult for her to try and kite it out, to try and play into the Kai'Sa, the Nautilus, the Sejuani, the Malphite, all of this dive. It really emphasizes the fact that the win condition for DZG has to be on this split push.
Well, we've seen quite a few times where, yes, Argo does get a really good split push, but nothing up. On the other side of the map, nothing happens really. Argo gets good split pushes, but DZG, they just kind of get rolled over.
Yeah, Argo is getting engaged on the bottom lane. That's 3 members showing. Now 4 members showing. DZG is just going to go onto the dragon. It is the 1 versus 5 situation for Argo. Gets the leap of faith, tries to make something happen, but it is 1 versus 5. Even allowed, he can't make that happen. But it will guarantee the Baron for the team. So overall, a worthy trade.
That is worth in my book. Jinx starts getting a little bit more gold.
Takes a little bit of advantage from Hyper Expert. They're looking to be engaged, but I don't think this is smart, as Eevee is now ulted in. Nice knock-up from Definite Lesbian to save the team with the Shurellias as well. Beautiful support play.
That could have been really bad. That could have been really, really bad. GVG almost go down. I feel like out of all of them, GVG needs to keep his Baron. He's in terms of team fights, he's the one that needs to carry this team. Jinx, once she gets IE, mainly relies on resets, but GVG right now, main damage on these team fights. He wants to try to find this Kai'Sa. But Argo right now, he's got the Spirit Visage, so he can survive a little bit longer in those split pushes, but not much is really getting accomplished, really. I mean, yes, they got the Baron, that's kind of gives them a little bit of a pillow to cushion themselves on, but still, they're still, I mean, right now they're only 1,000 gold ahead, but it still feels like this Kai'Sa is just a menace.
Yeah, the Kai'Sa, if there's any fight that happens where Eevee is not a part of it, DZG kind of is even in gold, just because of how much gold they funneled onto this Kai'Sa, now being 4 items, having that Lord Dominic's and the Phantom Dancer in inventory. No Infinity Edge just yet, but Kai'Sa, one of those champions that sometimes doesn't need it, can just rely on the pure stats of the items and the evolutions from her passive. Detective John is going to get caught out a little bit, and plenty of damage from GVG, force that Aftershock out. Now we see Argo on the top side as well, forcing the split push issue again. This Hullbreaker putting in so much work, it's so difficult for Malphite to actually deal with these powered up minions, even without the Baron buff.
Sorry about that, I am now back. It looks like DZG trying to get as much vision as they can onto this dragon. They want to ensure that Imagine Shadows does not get this Hex Dragon, but it's still looking rough. Jinx knows now how to IE. DZG almost gets caught.
Not find its mark. I like the attempt for the pick onto Kai'Sa. If he can even just chunk her out for about half of her HP, it's a much more difficult situation for her to dive into. But nice peel from the team means that GVG will not be able to find it. Now Argo again is in a dangerous situation. The dragon isn't up yet. The Shockwave and the Unstoppable Force burned. Argo finds the Tesla Spear onto Eevee Impersonator, but just gets blown up. Hyper Expert will die in trade. Venusphere picks up another one. He's going to be the tower mauling. I don't even know if this even gets all the way through. It does manage to find his way in. Now there might be trouble. He is forced to burn his own ulti. There's the depth charge onto Rave News. Gets the movement speed. Has the Ram stance as well to get himself out of there. GVG looks for the dive. They get the shot on gold. Venusphere finds Eevee. They're going to be able to find this fight as well. Venusphere is just getting resets with the lethal tempo. But Post is untouched right now. GVG's corpse gets plenty of damage in onto that. Good Jinx flashing forward, looking for the last hits. Gets the reset onto Nautilus here on the rampage now. Hopes manages to find his way up, but Sid Volter is going to fall as well. Eventually, if Gravenews manages to find the last hit here at some point, Malphite has a lot of armor and is barely tanking with the blue smite. With the Unstoppable Force, I don't even think that Sid Volter will manage to find it out and gets picked up. Hextech Dragon is up, but DZG is not rotating over to it yet. Hyper Expert, the fight still continues on. GVG has the ulti, but doesn't have the mana to cast it. Teleport comes in from Argo. Now with the Hullbreaker active, gets the 3-man Leap of Faith. Test the Spear doing plenty of damage to the Popes, but has to walk away. Venusaur now getting plenty of damage onto this tower. Still no Hex Dragon going down, though. This is a dangerous situation. If they stall any longer, Eevee will be back up and will be able to make something happen.
Such a massive play from DZG. That team fight right there got them back into this game. And right now, I'd say it is very, very 50-50 now as to which team can win this game.
Yeah, the situation is so close. Hyper Expert is here. They have vision in the pit. They know the dragon is going down. Pink Ward is in the pit. It's not being cleared just yet. Hyper Expert has vision of it, has the smite. DZG knows they're going to pull the dragon out of the pit, but Hyper Expert still has access to it, can still find his way in. Detective John doing a great job of pulling the dragon closer to his jungler. Dragon still off on the table. The vision gets pulled out of the pit, though. They don't have a pink in the pit right now. They don't have guaranteed vision of it. They finally get the pink Ward down. Going down 1,000. The gun was in. Smite confirmed by Gravenews. They managed to pick that one up. Positives finding huge shockwave onto 3 members, but Venusaur is untouched. Argo finds Hyper Expert, and suddenly the Jinx is going wild. GVG trying to make something happen on the bottom side of the map, but just has to burst his ulti to get away. Detective John gets caught by the knockup. Venusaur is going to be gifted this one for sure. Goes unstoppable on the Jinx, and after a really rough late early game, suddenly the Jinx is allowed to free fire.
Very odd play, honestly, from the Imagine Shadows. They were very hesitant to pull that trigger to go for this team fight. While GVG was still dead in the fountain, still had about like 10 seconds left. I believe they probably could have gone in and had a pretty solid fight before, but still, this Jinx now back online is getting these resets, getting these crits on with the IE. And honestly, looking like the spell at the end of this game right here. Really good shockwave.
Shockwave. Definite Lesbian just deleted. Eevee finds the last time on that one. Tester Spirit doing plenty of damage. Well, I say plenty of damage. Just doing a little bit of damage to Sid Volter, but that is the Malphite. It's a double kill now for Eevee, trying to get a chase down on the Gravenews, the Unstoppable Force, to guarantee the triple kill for his AD carry. Venusaur and GVG just have to walk away. They do get the inhibitor, which means it's now 2 inhibitors down, but I don't think they're going to be able to finish the game off of that.
Very... A little ambitious for DG. I understand why they wanted to try to get double inhibs, but now the game's back to kind of a 50-50 state. Jinx, yes, has really got items, but look at this Kaisa. She's full build right now, especially with the GA. But Jinx now, with flying full out at Lord Dom's regard. Honestly, I see Jinx doing a lot more work at these team fights. But now they're just getting the Baron almost.
Yeah, the Baron's now going to be started up. Venusaur is nearby, but the rest of the team is not. GVG is inside the enemy base doing something. They do know now that Baron is being taken. I don't think they can stop it at all. The Rocket is not going to be able to find any sort of a steal or even a delay on it. Now GVG is just forced into the ring with Sid Volter, and this is not a situation that the Echo wants to be in. Has to try and run away, has to lose his flash over the wall. Sid Volter is going to try and continue the chase, but I don't think he's going to be able to find Echo. GVG should be able to just walk away. Unless he greets for the Raptor camp, because now he might be able to be found. Detective John is going to get the depth charge over the wall, and that's just a pick. Really greedy positioning from GVG.
Very greedy, and a lot of mistakes going on from both sides of from both teams. A lot of some simple mistakes going out from Imagine Shadows to try to get for DZG to get back into the game. And once DZG are back in the game, they start doing slowly doing even more mistakes, and now looking. Still 50-50, honestly. It's just, right now, this is just a battle of the AD carries and GVG trying to one-shot the Kaisa.
Yeah, it is just a matter of who can kill the enemy AD carry first. They have most of the gold in this game, and they have really been the story of this early and this mid game. Just the dominance that Kaisa has had in this laning phase with the Nautilus, just the free roaming early game that she had. But now Jinx catching up, finding her way into these fights, getting a couple of clutch resets, and now having 4 items in her inventory, being able to actually manage in these fights and being able to play them out in a situation that is much more comfortable to her. With what we decided was the better scaling, can they find their win? To teleport being burned from Sid Volter to try and look for a pick, but with the traps it will just be Venusaur walking away.
A little ambitious for the teleport, trying to get a little bit of a play going. Right now, Match Shadows, they want this Hex Dragon. They get it. It drastically helps them end this game. It's up in a minute. Raven's actually does get in Natha's chains, so he will effectively become a lot more tanky against this Kaisa. And actually, if you look at these items on Malphite, he does have the Abyssal Mask, he does have the Frozen Heart. He's going, even with the more damage to that, I still think this Malphite is going to be incredibly tanky.
He has rotated up to top side. The Dragon's not up for 45 seconds. The Leap of Faith does not find Eevee at all here. Argo just trying to get the Test of Spirit onto this Kaisa, but cannot find it. GVG has rotated up though, but I don't think Argo is long for this world with the amount of damage that Kaisa puts out. There's the Unstoppable Force to put in the damage onto GVG. Graveness has rotated up, but he has to just burn Splash immediately. Getting found over the wall, but the CCM immediately says he will be just fine. Eevee has found MetaShift, gets the execution, gets the deletion on the enemy AD carry, and that's going to be the fight. Eevee is still untouched with GA up. It's a double kill for this Kaisa. Post finds a shockwave onto 2, and I think that's going to be the game.
I don't know. They don't have that much. They have super mages pushing into the base. I don't think they can actually end this game. Yes, Hex Dragon is up.
It is the ace. The super mages are in their base, so maybe the game is not over, but I think that should just be guaranteed soul for the side of a match of Shadows.
It should be, I believe. When you look at the items, right? Jinx still doesn't have a GA. That Kaisa is still, honestly, in that entire fight, Jinx got untouched. Aside from when JVD tried to go onto her, nothing happened to this Kaisa, and a really huge killer instinct to dive into the backline to kill Venus Sphere. Just showing how dominant they are in these team fights.
Yeah, that will be the soul guaranteed for Imagine Shadows. And yeah, like we were talking about, this game is about the AD carries. It's about how they can position and how they can play, and Eevee has just been putting on a show, a clinic on how to play a dive AD carry with a beautiful positioning in these games.
Also, on the second side of the coin, Venus Sphere has been getting really good positioning, especially in these fights, to get these resets, to get all these crits. And it's still just battle the AD carries, who can position the best, who can deal the most damage. I still think Kaisa is still favored in these team fights, just because of how mobile she can be, especially with how much CC her teammates can apply to get more plasma, to give her more opportunities to use the killer instinct. And Jinx doesn't have much mobility. She does have flash, but other than that, Malphite gets one good angle again, or really good shockwave. It just spells doom.
Argo's getting EH on the bottom side again. There's no objectives up for his team to go for, so Argo's just going to have to try and play this fight out. Shockwave finds Venus here for so much damage. Popes finds the one shot. Argo's getting deleted on the bottom side as well, making this fight last for as long as possible, but Popes just finds the enemy AD carry. It's a double kill for this Orianna. GVG is going to try and find revenge, but Hyper Expert does a beautiful job feeling his for his mid laner, making sure that he can go out of the play unabated.
That was so much damage from the shockwave. I was honestly a little shocked. That nearly one shot of the Jinx, and it's already almost on cooldown again. This just shows how we've mainly put our focus on the AD carries, but slowly and surely, 12, 1, and 9 on this Orianna old build. It's just going to be absolute horror for the Jinx. It just adds another threat that she needs to focus on. And it's just really hard for her to position.
And similarly to last game, it's just been quietly Popes. There's the engage onto GVG. Has to burn his flash away. Still has the ulti, but is going to get stunned up. He really doesn't want to have to burn that ulti. If he doesn't have to, he will be able to survive without it, but losing his flash is a very big cooldown, and it means him a lot less threat for this Kaisa, who still has GA. Importantly, Kaisa's still holding onto that cooldown, means that she'll be much safer in these fights.
And Shadows looking for a little bit of a bait, trying to see if they'll walk into them to get a free pick to end this game, but looking for just a free Baron. Argo actually keeping 2 a ward in the bot lane.
Argo's just going to look to take the inhibitors. Well, definitely Lesbian gets picked out. GVG, a nice dodge from that hook, will not get picked out, but Sid Voltor finally spots the Alawi in the base. They are going to start channeling recalls. Detective John just trying to make sure that they don't get stopped. GVG has to burn his ulti to get away. They're still delaying the recalls. Glacial Prison goes down. GVG gets picked. Finally goes down, but it does mean that Argo, I think, will be able to pick up both inhibitors here almost for certain, even with the slows coming out from Malphite. Just watching how Alawi slowly has to take it. That is both inhibitors going down, which means that the Baron and the Elder will be much harder for Imagine Shadows to take if they want it. Argo's a bit stuck in the base right now, as the rest of Imagine Shadows is going to start going for this Baron. He will eventually clear it up with Kai'Sa's damage on it. Now Argo's in a lot more trouble as he has to walk away from this. Recalls are going to be a little bit delayed as Imagine Shadows are looking for some picks. Argo looking for the turnaround. Has the Leap of Faith, is not going to burn it just yet, just trying to escape from this Malphite in the slowest fashion possible. There's the Unstoppable Force. Sid Voltor finally burns that one, and with the Kai'Sa nearby, I think there is almost no way that Argo's going to make it out of this one.
Really not. Although he is
they're playing it slow, they're playing it safe. Argo gets the flash over the wall. Eevee has the full team behind it, though it will just be the Kai'Sa going legendary.
They did play that very slow. They want to. They don't want to mess up. They want to play it as safe as possible and play the game the way they want to play.
Yeah, but again, with those inhibitors going down, it doesn't mean that the wave positioning is so much more awkward for them to get and actually end the game. Because pushing into super minions in mid and in bot means that those lanes are a lot harder for them to actually be able to end the game off. But Grave News is getting engaged on, has that CC immunity though with that Ram charge, so we'll be able to walk out of the play. GVG is on the flank, he's looking for it, doesn't manage to find Popes. Good positioning from this Orianna, still just looking for that shockwave. Venusphere has the GA now in inventory. It's a full build Jinx, but that GA can be popped so easily. The inhibitor finally goes down for DZG. They are 10,000 gold behind, but we're starting to get to the point of the game where the gold doesn't matter anymore, and it's really just about how you play the fights.
That is true. When it gets to these late game team fights, especially late game right now, we're 44 minutes a game. I think in terms of for Alawi, I don't know how much value the Hullbreaker now gives if we're looking at the whole scheme of things.
Yeah, at some point that item might be worth selling to get something like a Black Cleaver instead. Just try and play around the Jinx. Get her in a position where she can win the game. A little bit more cheese coming out. There's the Unstoppable Force. It just finds one, though. The Shockwave burned onto one. The Han is just deleted. Grave News goes next. Argo's in the middle of the enemy team, though. GVG finds Pose, but he has burned the Zhonya's. There's the Echo ulti as well to get him all of his health back. Argo with the huge Static Shield, but it's just not enough. Venusphere still practically untouched in this fight, but now is going to get engaged on. It's a triple kill for the Kai'Sa. Make it a quadra as soon as this GA comes back up, and I think that's going to be the game decider.
That was really well played by Man Shadows. Really well played. We saw GVG come in, so quickly just dispersed away from his W and just managed to clean up a really scrappy fight from DZG.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the AD carries in this game and how important they were, but equally as important was Popes on this Orianna. 29 out of 40 KP. It's pretty damn good for a mid laner as they're going to close out the series 2-0. Not exactly the performance we wanted to see from DZG Arcadia today. However, I do want to point out how good Imagine Shadows looked. They played the game to their style. They played it, executed it very nicely. They peeled their AD carry. They played a bot lane style that was comfortable for them. They even played to their mid laner in situations where they could. And you can even just see in the damage charts here, the amount of damage that Kai'Sa and Orianna were able to output. And even the amount of damage that Malphite was able to do.
That is quite impressive, honestly, seeing Malphite doing almost the same amount of damage as the Kai'Sa, even for going full tank. Just shows how much value he got out of those ultimates, and a lot of scrappy fights from Argo. Just when it came to Argo split pushing, just got a lot of free hitting, but in the grand like at the larger scheme of things, Argo delayed the game as long as he possibly could. He split pushed really well. He got a lot of inhibitors and gave Venusphere a lot of time to scale up on this Jinx, and it worked, but unfortunately they just couldn't get the nail right.
Yeah, I think it really was just a matter of timing. You could see a lot of situations where Archer was split pushing, and it was a minute to Dragon, a minute and a half to Baron, like 50 seconds to the next neutral objective. And when you're getting caught that far away from the objective, it gives the enemy team time to rotate back to the play, time to get their vision lines set up, time to make sure that they can make the next part of the play happen, which is kind of the downfall of split pushers. It really is such a high difficulty play style to play out because you have to be perfectly in tune with your team, perfectly in tune with the timers that are on the map, and it just didn't end up working out for DZG today. It was a very close game overall, despite what the kill score would tell you. The game was tight. DZG made it look good, but in the end of the day, Imagine Shadows was the better team.
Unfortunately.
Yep, we will be calling it for tonight's stream. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you for supporting Arcadia. They'll be looking to play their next series and look to continue to keep themselves in playoffs contention, but the race gets tighter and tighter with each passing week. Again, thank you all for joining us. I've been WhatDoBritty. This has been ICGE. Alyssa's in the background, making sure that the stream runs smoothly. Thank you all so much for being here, and we'll catch you next time.